As you may know, the popular show, Ed, Edd and Eddy, has been running for a long time. However, between October 7th, 2003 and October 21st of 2003, episode 34 was accidentally released 1 week before it was scheduled to. It was also known to some around the office that the primary writer had been sick with the flu, and instead of going on to make episode 34, the show was supposed to play episode 1. At 5 a.m. Eastern Time, people reported a very disturbing new episode appearing on Cartoon Network. Some children were unfortunate enough to watch it. Apparently, the quality of the episode was mediocre when held to the regular standards. The animation was choppy. Sound was constricted and very muffled. Reports of a line running up and down, similar to a badly recorded VHS tape, were received. Scenery was described as overwhelmingly dark and depressing, without using props and other background objects, and stormy looking. Characters also behaved oddly. Instead of the normal goofy hijinks-inspired personalities, viewers complained that they seemed extremely agitated and hateful towards each other, and constantly about to begin sobbing after the lines. The protagonist also had a very bad lisp. No one knows why, but he spoke with a sexual tone, and that further bothered the viewers. I was one of these viewers. The episode began with Eddy walking down the street with Ed. I noted that Double D was missing. There was an angular shot coming from in front of the two to show them walking towards the viewer. Eddy was wearing the angry look he does when something goes wrong, but his eyes were red around the iris. Ed looked absolutely forlorn and practically dragged behind Eddy. Tears were in his eyes, which were both lazy and looking in opposite directions. Kevin, the series antagonist, was riding his bike opposite of the Eds, towards them. The shot became blurry, and low moans were heard coming from Eddy before Kevin hit him, which never happened because the screen went to black. The screen then snapped back, and Kevin was again heading towards Eddy. The view was so blurry this time, all I saw was a green blob headed towards a yellow one. Again, the low moan, only this time it sounded like the microphone was broken, and a loud static came, greatly overshadowing the moan. Then, a claymation sequence of Double D sleeping in Eddy's bed came up. Honestly, it may have just been the abruptness, but I jumped and shivered. Waking up and getting out of bed, he moved oddly around the circular room, the fast pitter-patter of the footsteps being the only audio. The step sounds were very clear, as I was shown a bird's-eye view of him scampering around the room. There were no visible doors. Double D began screeching, like a fisher cat, as he moved wildly around the cell of the room, faster and faster, until the screen began blurring out again. The pink room's color, now swallowing a now orange blur. An extreme close-up of Eddy's front door sat, in absolute silence, for a maddening long time. At least 2 minutes of dead silence, and a door. Next we see Jimmy and Sarah at a doctor of some sort, probably an oral doctor. Jimmy is obstructed in view by a hanging lamp, but you can hear him crying loudly, with Sarah trying to comfort him, in an unusually lorn fashion. "It hurts, Sarah. It hurts." Jimmy was saying. Suddenly, the door of the room is smashed open by a new character, a dentist. His face wasn't shown because he was tall enough to be out of the shot. Sarah was escorted out of the room. Jimmy was then shown. His headgear was mangled, the front bent upwards, stretching his lip very high, tearing proportions. The front of his gums was trickling blood, and teeth were missing. The disturbing part was that he had lost both of his arms and legs beforehand, apparently, and sat paraplegic. I almost cried as I came to the conclusion that the others had beaten him up and bent his headgear. The camera stayed on his mangled face for a few seconds, still as a picture. Silence as ever. Commercials then came on. We were instantly assaulted by the sound of a masculine scream. We see a hairy, shirtless Rolf in a darkened shed, with a viciously angry look on his face. But he is with another shirtless male character, who is wearing a bandana. This new character's identity remains unknown, but he is chained to the ceiling, with his stomach ripped open in a cartoonish but gory way. His guts are being devoured by Rolf, a horrifying expression on his face. The screen then blurs as the camera pans out, and the character's scream fades with it. Naz is then shown reading a magazine on her couch. The quality is now perfect. But then the screen cuts to Eddy, who is alone without Ed. The quality declines worse than before, and he is still walking. The sun is now lightening the mood somewhat, as he smiles and begins running. The door is shown again, and we see through Eddy's eyes in a first-person view. As he reaches out and opens it, his house is nice and bright, but a very badly played violin is blaring, the only audio in this scene as he makes his way through the house. Eddy then opens the door to his room, but the screen cuts to Johnny, who is shown under Naz's couch cushion as he crawls out on all fours in a comedic way and pops up behind her, with her still oblivious. I laughed because someone forgot to draw his eyes, and I thought of a mole. Suddenly, I stopped laughing as he started swallowing her head. He and she stayed like this until she started kicking and struggling. Johnny held her like this until she went limp. A zoom-in on his face revealed extremely small human eyes. Double D was then shown, laying on Eddy's floor, no longer in claymation, with his eyes shut. The camera showed Eddy's house for the remainder of the episode, which was about 3 minutes, and the next program began on the spot.